Welcome back. Now that we've covered some basic considerations for your build, let's dive into each aspect of building out a van, starting with the walls and the infrastructure. As you know by now, there are tons of different ways to build out a van. It can cost $1,000 or it can cost over $100,000. You can make it as simple and easy or as high-end and complex as you want. A lot of variations in cost have to do with the materials you use, which makes a big difference in the outcome and the longevity of the van. Some things to keep in mind when planning for a sturdy structure are sound dampening, insulation, wall paneling, and wood choice. Because of the nature of van life, it's important to have a solid build that can withstand the constant vibrations of the road. Vibrations not only weaken the integrity of the build, but can also be really noisy. Cargo vans aren't designed for quiet road trips, they're work vehicles. So with that comes highway noise and sounds of people walking by when you're trying to stealth camp. But there are ways to make your van quieter and more comfortable, which we'll dive into now, starting with sound dampening. Sound dampening materials make a huge difference in reducing the vibrations and road noise in your van. These materials help keep outside sounds outside and inside sounds inside, so you can enjoy peace and quiet inside the van and won't be as easily heard from the outside. They are typically installed directly on the inside of the vehicle's metal walls before adding insulation. Peel and stick sound deadeners are a popular option. They're easy to install and you don't need a ton of it to make a big difference. Even applying the material to even just a quarter of the inside space will significantly reduce outside noise and vibrations if you're using a good product specifically designed for this purpose. We suggest applying it to the walls, the ceiling, the cab, the floor, the wheel wells, and the doors. And 50 square feet is typically enough for the major areas of a panel van, but you'll need more if you want to cover more of the inside. That's what Outside Van did when they converted this van, and many other van lifers who ride in here always comment on how quiet it is. Next, you'll start thinking about insulation. How you insulate your van will make a huge difference in climate control inside the van. Proper insulation will help keep the van cooler in the summer and it will help it hold heat in the winter. Insulation materials are measured in R value, which is the capacity of a material to resist heat flow. Basically, the higher the R value, the greater the insulating power. Some materials have a greater R value than others, and what type of insulation is best is a surprisingly debatable topic. In addition to the R value, there are a number of other factors to consider when choosing your insulation. First, you want your insulation to be resistant to water, mildew, and mold. Condensation can be an issue in these camper vans, so it's important that the insulation you choose doesn't retain moisture. Second, you want something that is going to be easy to install if you're doing it yourself. Third, many types of insulation, such as fiberglass, contain toxic materials that require special precautions during install, and you'll want to take that into account. And finally, cost comes into play. In recent years, there have been two major frontrunners for preferred insulation type. In my van, Outside Van used 3M Thinsulate for insulation. 3M Thinsulate is a synthetic material, it is non-toxic and easy to install, and also comes with some sound dampening properties. Despite having a higher price tag and a slightly lower R value than some of the other options, 3M Thinsulate is a clear frontrunner in the discussions on the Sprinter Source forum. Combined with the sound dampening material in this van, Outside Van estimates that they achieved an R value of about 6. But putting numbers aside and speaking from qualitative experience, the insulation in this van seems very effective. We of course have a heater, but we've slept in sub-freezing temperatures on ski trips and have had no issue with temperature control or moisture. Another emerging frontrunner is sheep's wool from a company called Havelock. In all natural materials, sheep's wool has been touted as an eco-friendly choice. It has a slightly higher R value than the 3M Thinsulate. It's cheaper, has natural moisture-wicking properties, and also provides some sound dampening. However, bugs love wool, so in order to prevent insects as well as reduce flammability, Havelock applies a small amount of boric acid to the sheep's wool. This material is considered non-toxic, according to the National Pesticide Information Center. One last thing to consider that compared to 3M Thinsulate, sheep's wool is reported to be slightly messier on the install. A final option I'll mention is rigid foam boards like polyisocyanurate. These are widely available at hardware stores and are relatively cheap. If using a rigid foam board, you'll need to pay attention to any air gaps and make sure to fill them in with spray foam, 3M Thinsulate, or wool. Otherwise, airflow will result in moisture buildup in those areas. Before moving on, here are a few materials you're going to want to avoid. These include denim, which retains moisture, Reflectix, which used to be popular but as it turns out is not very effective, and fiberglass, which is toxic and contains formaldehyde. Down below in the resources, I'll link to a thread in the Sprinter forum about insulation where you can get some other opinions. We've touched on sound dampening and insulation, so now let's talk about the walls of your van. When it comes to selecting materials for walls, ceiling, and other structures, there are a lot of options. Do you want something prefabricated or custom built? Do you like the look of wood, or do you prefer something more modern and industrial looking? There are some great resources out there that offer building materials at discounted prices, like salvage yards, upcycling centers, and local construction stores, so do keep that in mind. Ultimately, material selection is based on a few things: your budget, aesthetic choice, and the availability of resources. In my van, Outside Van used mahogany Lewin panels for the walls. They adhered a layer of closed-cell foam to give the panels a little cushioning, and then wrapped each panel in the desired upholstery. In the case of Outside Van, they typically use polyolefin, which is an upholstery with many uses such as carpeting and vehicle interiors. It's durable, resistant to stain, mildew, and sunlight, so it's a great option for camper vans. Another option to consider for upholstered wall panels is Sunbrella. In my van, Outside Van used a material called sill leather, which is made of silicone. Sill leather is an eco-friendly, non-toxic, waterproof, and highly durable material, and I've been very happy with it in this van. I can literally get a wet cloth and wipe the walls down and wipe them clean. Other van lifers like the look of wood paneling. I don't have personal experience with wood, but many DIYers offer tongue and groove paneling. Others on a tighter budget might just use a marine grade plywood and paint over it. A final option I'll recommend is the Adventure Wagon Kit Sprinter Van Conversion Kit. Right now they're only available for sprinters, but hopefully down the road they will expand to other platforms. These kits come with everything you need to build a solid foundation for your van, including insulation, wiring, pre-cut wall panels, trim, L-track, and more. For folks who want to DIY but don't want to deal with building the infrastructure, that's a great option.